and full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow in Pit Lane's weekly get-together, where we talk about all things motorsport, and oh boy do we have so much motorsport to talk about again this week. The Le Mans 24-hour, another great weekend of motor racing at the Circuit de la Sarthe, including for a win for Ferrari. Some great news for a young Australian, Cameron McLeod, wrapping things up in the with clean sweep of the Mustang Challenge, and a lot of other news aside from the world of sports car racing. Also on the circuit at Mexico City, we had Shane Van Gisbergen absolutely dominating once again in the world of NASCAR and showing his street course or his road racing abilities with another great win in difficult conditions. A win that was of such domination that it really did flummox a lot of the American commentators. It's hilarious watching some of the reactions from them. I mean, they just couldn't believe how comfortable he was in those conditions and how much faster he was than anybody else in the race. Great race in IndyCar too. If you had the opportunity to catch up with the IndyCar race, a bit of a bad weekend for Will Power. Was up at the front of the race, as was Scott McLaughlin, but they both had problems. It was a bad day for Penske. They had none of their three cars finished. Joseph Newgarden ended up on his lid. Thankfully, was uninjured, but it was a big crash there. And so lots of things happening. So let's find out what everybody's up to. Joining me to talk about all things motorsport related, we've got Peter Johnson, we've got Mark Jones, and joining us also we've got Craig Doc Gladigo. G'day guys, how are we all?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you, Brett? How have you been? All right, yeah.
Okay, well let's we'll start. We'll start first of all with because we could just talk about Le Mans and we could be here for hours, or I could be here, probably Mark and I could be here for hours talking about Le Mans 24 hours, but it was a great race and we'll get back onto it in a moment. But let's talk about the Canadian Grand Prix, and we've been waiting for Oscar and Lando to come to blows, and they sort of did, but it was very much sort of Lando. He was very quick to put his hand up and say, my bad, guys, really sorry, I stuffed up. So, Pete, what did you think about it all? Everybody sort of saying, well, yes, it clearly was a mistake by Lando. Everybody except our good friend Jacques Villeneuve, who basically said that this is all Oscar Piastri's fault.
First of all, I think he thinks that to be contrary is the only way he's going to keep a pundit's job for whoever he works for, because he's always having the opposite opinion to what everybody else does. Yes, it was basically Lando ran into the back of Oscar, and he went for a gap that wasn't there. He went, and all he needed to do, I think he was going to get him. All he needed to do was just be patient and bide his time. I think the first two switchbacks were fine. It was that third one that got him, and I think really all he needed to do was just be patient and bide his time.
Yeah, it was obvious. I mean, I suppose the only thing you could say about it was obvious that that Lando was very quick. And probably faster, and I suppose it comes back to that. At what point, if any, should the team turn around and say, give the old, Lando was faster than you, move aside and let him try and chase down Antonelli, who was third. But they didn't do that. To their credit, they said they were going to let them race, and they did let them race, and Lando made the mistake. But once again, I think that. Nico Rosberg is already sort of saying, I think that Oscar is very much living rent free in Lando's head at the moment, and he was saying just how difficult it was when he makes mistakes like this. At one point, he said there's got to be some sort of self doubt, saying, well, I know I'm quick, I can be as quick, but why aren't I winning? Why aren't I winning like he's winning? Why am I making these mistakes? What has he got that I haven't got? And he said you start questioning yourself, and before you know it. you start second guessing things, and you don't go for the gaps that might be there, or you're not sure. At what point do they turn round? That's the other thing. At what point do they turn round and say, like, okay, well, it's very clear that Oscar is the person who's most likely to win the Drivers' Championship. I think Tiff Nadell on the Love Cars podcast was sort of saying, and once again the British media was going, oh, I think we have to. We basically all said that that there's definitely a number one and a number two driver at McLaren, and there probably is, but I think we might have got the order wrong. So
it's sometimes it seemed obvious to me that Zach favours Lando Zach regards Lando as the number one driver, and I think that might be because he's the established one. He's the one that's been there for the longest. I don't think it's got to do anything with their status in the championship. I think it's more got to do with seniority, if you like.
Who's got the larger salary?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the same thing, but yeah.
In the past, I've seen flashes where Lando hasn't handled pressure well. He doesn't handle pressure well, I don't think.
no, well, that's why I said last year that I expected, that Oscar. I thought Oscar would was a chance to win a world championship before Lando. I just think that under pressure, he's. I think under pressure he's a lot more calm. He's actually, even though he's younger and less experienced, I think he's a lot more mature in the way he drives than Lando. Lando seems to get very very head up and very. I don't think Oscar would have made that same mistake. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think he would be more likely to say, yeah, no, there's not a gap there. I will bide my time and I'll get past him eventually. I also think he probably would have been a bit more vocal on the radio as well by saying, hey guys, we could race each other and we could possibly put, and it could end badly. I'm clearly faster than him, so just perhaps have a word in his ear. But he was very lucky. I mean, he was damn lucky that he didn't have that it wasn't a really big accident, and also that he didn't have a cut in that tyre. I mean, after getting clobbered by the wing, but thankfully it didn't seem to do any damage at all to Oscar's car. But he was still only fourth overall, and of course, George Russell, great weekend for Mercedes. George Russell first. Kimi Antonelli was third, and that guy, future Le Mans racer, Max Verstappen, was second. Franz, yeah, he was.
They were just out there having a race around, and one hit the other accidentally in the backside, and that was all there is to it. I mean, I'm seeing some podcasts and YouTube vloggers getting an hour out of it. It's like, seriously, just it is what it is. Don't overhype it. One guy ran into it back another. It happens almost every second week in Formula One. One car hits another one, we move on. Crap.
But before that, there were twice where they were side by side.
Yeah, bit of fun.
So there was a battle there, but
Oscar outraced Lando.
Yeah. Well, Kimi got involved in that, so you've got to look at the big picture and what Kimi did as well too. And he also knew what he was doing, and the team was also involved in that. And Kimi was deliberately keeping Oscar in his DRS. That was the whole idea of it too. So there was a few little
We
sideshow
saw
bobs going on there as well.
Well, we saw 2 years ago Carlos Sainz do that at it was one of the street circuits. I think Singapore, where he basically he used that kind of tactic to back the rivals behind him into each other, and he was able to use that to keep pressure off of himself by yeah, you're absolutely right, Doc. That was that was and it's fascinating to see someone so young getting into that sort of tactical warfare so early in his career.
Has anyone looked at the brilliant George side of the weekend? And congratulations, the Saturday specialist produced. But have you seen the naughty George? Has anyone seen what the FIA have decided upon the trying to get Franz banned? How funny was that?
I have no idea.
What? Okay,
No
so
idea.
I was a bit of
he brake tested him.
Mercedes
protested,
and then they dropped it. Then
it's been dropped, has it?
Mercedes
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. If you look at the footage of it in raw and slow mo and what George did, it's slap. Good try, George, but no one's going to play that little game with you trying to get Franz.
Red Bull. Sorry, it was Red Bull that protested Mercedes.
Yeah. Well, that's because
they did the same thing. Max did the same thing. If that's what it was about, I think it was about the safety car, and Max went alongside him at one point and then went back. So.
No, it wasn't the safety car. It was going. Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's all a bit of fun.
A little bit of intimidation, trying to encourage Max to back off a little bit for to give to allow George to get a little bit of.
Just a points penalty. That's all he's just trying to. He's just trying to get. He's trying to get him. It's a bit of. I think it's a little bit of get back for the last race and a bit of like. I'll play your little game if you want to sort that thing out and see what the rules committee think about that one.
Once again, Canada turned on a really good race, and
oh really?
Yeah, I thought that that it was unpredictable. I mean, the McLarens didn't dominate as they have been. Obviously, Mercedes were quick, Max was quick as far as Red Bull was concerned. The Ferraris weren't up there. They did have some. More problems along the way. I think they were probably more focused on what was happening in France in a way, because it was things went much better for them over there than they did. Well, to an extent. We'll talk about that in a moment. At least for one of the Ferraris, things didn't go exactly according to plan. But before we move on, let's say hello to some of our regulars. To say hello once again to Box. Good evening to you once again, to Mark Goldsmith over there in South Australia. Good day to Mark. How are you? Nice to catch up with you again. David Hodges again saying hello everyone. Good day to David. Jared Crabb is with us again, basically saying similar to Max Ricciardo crash racing each other. Piastri cooler under pressure, and I think that is the system. So
I was going to give a quick shout out, Brett. I've used the background picture of our friends when we've done some media stuff at the Bathurst 12 Hour up in New South Wales. I'll just say a big thank you. I don't usually do this, but this was the best picture I had a quick look for our friends Michael and John Daggers and that from Sportscar 365 and the affiliate. So thank you for the background pick tonight. We'll get on to that because they had a very unfortunate. I'm just going to make sure I actually pay credit where credit's due when I've used their photo for a change, not just a generic one. So thanks, guys.
But there, Mark Russell is also joining us, and so we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a gap now before the 1 week gap before the next round. Certainly, I think we're in Pete, we're in Austria next.
Austria,
so once again, Red Bull on their home sort of home circuit in inverted commas are always very competitive there, and I think the McLarens will be better suited to that circuit than perhaps they were in Canada. But let's see. I mean, they might be sort of everything might be closing up, and for the rest of the year we might get a closer fight if Ferrari can just get their act together as well. It's going to be a hell of a second half of the year.
Touchy subject. You mentioned Ferrari. Number one person at the moment, Fred Vasseur. Everyone probably knows about the news about that.
The Italian media does that.
Yeah.
No, well, yeah, they do that, but there was a little bit of a difference this time, and compared to all the other years, is that the two papers that did it they're not associated with each other in any way or shape or form. So they're not like a Under the Murdoch banner or something like that, or news.com. So they are completely separate. They also have been sitting on this story for a little while, apparently, both of them, because it's well known just outside, other than just the media, that he's got 3 races with a bit of an assessment or a review done on it, on whether he keeps his spot. And also there was something that was in the news in the week leading up to Italy on the sports side of life, and they both took the opportunity to run that story on at that particular day, because it was not a dead day, but it was not related to other sport going on in the country, and so they could make the biggest splash with it. So there is the old saying that's going around as well, though, too, where there's smoke, there's fire.
It's not necessarily. I mean, if there was fire wherever there was smoke, I mean, the whole world would be burning. Well, a lot of it is right now, but but you hear a lot of these stories, and most of them, 95% of them, never actually come true. So we'll see over the next few weeks.
We hope not. Fred's
we would hope not, and the fact is, I mean, it's very difficult halfway through the year, because it's okay to get rid of somebody, but you've got to have someone to replace you. And that's the problem Alpine have got at the moment. Now it looks like they've got somebody sort of tagged to take over the role of the team manager. Flavio has somebody from his past who used to work at Benetton. So,
see, Ange Postecoglou's looking for a new job.
Yeah, well, he'd be as good as any. He's a bit of he can be a bit of a miracle worker, and he's a
second season. Not
exactly. So when 2027 comes around,
new regulations and all the rest of it, and Ange in his second year.
Yeah,
sounds good to me. I like your thinking, Mark. I reckon we should float that. Let's get that rumour started. Yeah, let's get Ange Postecoglou to Alpine. I like it. I think that's a great one. Okay, so that was Formula One, and we look forward to what was coming up next. I suppose we've got to move on very quickly.
Before you do, big mention to the Hulk. That was a pretty good effort from the Hulk on the weekend as well too. That was a good drive and punching above their weight.
They are getting better. They've had a couple of races where they're not totally out of it, and I suppose that would be pleasing the people at Audi. Certainly, there were Audi people at Le Mans apparently wandering around.
Well, they can't run two competitions at once. They say that was their statement a while ago, wasn't it, Brett?
That was their statement. But they might be looking with everybody else joining. I mean, it certainly hasn't hurt Ferrari. Obviously, Aston Martin have only just started, but you've got Ferrari, Aston Martin. You're going to have McLaren fairly soon as well.
Mercedes might even bite. The Silver Arrows might even bite one day in the next couple of years.
Well, that's the next one that's sort of planned. The problem is that they've got is where do they put all these hypercars? Because the field is just ridiculously large.
Oh, yeah. How good is
it? As things at the moment. So
well, I suppose if it gets to the point where there's 30 hypercars, then GT3 is broken off into their own championship. It would, I would assume.
Well, you would think that obviously, in the series, in the World Endurance Championship, they've already sort of done away with the LMP2s. That was an announcement on Friday. Was the new LMP2 cars, but also the other one, which is potentially more important for us here, is the announcement that that hypercars and LMDH cars will be invited into the Asian Le Mans series. However, it will be very strictly, there'll be no factories allowed. It'll only be customer cars only. And the problem is, it's like, as I said in the ticker, who has the money to buy them, and then who has the cars to sell? Ferrari have already said that they are prepared to make cars available from at a very suitable cost to other teams, but Porsche are saying no. We've got no more cars. We can't produce any more cars. Have no intention of producing other cars at this stage.
The obvious source, I think, is IMSA Acuras.
Well, once again, John Hindhaugh was saying at the end of Le Mans that he's spoken to people at Acura in the United States and Honda Performance Racing, HPR, over there, and they've said that quote, the company have zero interest at all in developing that car for anything other than IMSA racing. There is no interest at all in taking part in the WEC.
No, I'm not saying. Well, they're not going to the WEC. This is for the Asian Le Mans series, and this is to create customer cars.
Yeah, but I mean, do they have the resource? I mean, because basically, the reason one of they're saying that they're not interested is they're saying we just don't. We're not going to develop we're not going to put in the time, money, and development cost to produce more than sort of the couple of cars that we need for the North American Sports Car Championship. This is very much driven by Acura, Honda North America. They're the people who are interested. The Japanese, the head office, say that this has got nothing to do with us, and we are not even remotely interested. So whether that happens or not, but yeah, it would be interesting because like if by some outside chance we did get the Asian Le Mans series returned to the Bend, we might get a couple of hypercars, but is it going to be good for the series? Like right now, I mean, the series is fantastic with LMP2 and the GT3s. The racing's terrific. And LMP3, but you suddenly introduce a hypercar into that mix, and there'd only be one or two at the most. That would make it, one turn
too early.
One turns up, sort of, some really, really rich person, decides that yes, we're going, Sam and Yasser
focus all their efforts on one car, Brett. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they go out and they say, "Hey, we're going to buy a Ferrari."
And they'll just come out and it'll wipe the field of everything. And maybe another one there'll be a rumor there's another one coming through. But on the bright side, though, it does leave the door ajar, I suppose, in future if they keep on. There's obviously the development of these hypercars, and you have a Series 1 and Series 2 and so forth, and Porsche do create another 2 or 3 in the next couple of years, and regulations slightly change, and there still might be obviously called a hypercar. You never know, there might be, say, half a dozen one day in 10 years that might come out. So at least it does open the door for it, but I agree with your overall gesture, Brett. It's completely ridiculous that they're going to change the rules for something that won't possibly happen.
The interesting thing is they've said that in terms of the hypercar regulations, they're going to go through right now until about, 2030 or 2032 or something.
Well, they've got fabulous stability, and they've got new car makers coming into the series.
Coming in left, right, and centre.
And you don't want to create a situation where there's the potential for a new manufacturer to come into the series when the regulations might be set to change in only 2 or 3 years' time.
And what everyone's got's obsolete. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was one of the reasons that Ford decided eventually to come in. They'd said that, basically once they knew the regulations weren't going to change, they said, okay, we can now sort of amortize it over the period of like 5 to 10 years, rather than sort of build something that is only going to last 1 or 2 years, and then there's regulations change and we've got to do a whole new engine and a whole new a whole new chassis design and all the rest and all that development costs as it is at the moment. They say, well, we can basically design the car, we can build the car, and we've got, we're going to get sort of a good 5 to 6 or 8 years use out of it.
Well, the LMP regulations flicked over at the 5-year mark from the Nissan V8s that they had previously. They'd been the 5.6 litre version of the Nissan V8 that had been running for 5 years before they've switched over to the Toyota Turbo this year. And the LMP2
there might be a few of those engines
older than
floating
that.
around somewhere. I mean,
Well,
they're the sorts of things that are going to pop up in hill climb specials and all the rest of it. But I wonder if they're eligible for sports sedans
the same-
here in Australia.
Well, the new LMP2 is going to be the Toyota engine with the twin turbos on it anyway. So.
Yeah. Yep, so well, that would be interesting. As Jared said, could Triple Eight end up running the Mustang GT3 program? I'm sure they will in Australia. I have no doubt that that's the case, but whether they would be
stick their nose in it.
willing to be, because
Well,
obviously
they've already
got Proton.
Yeah, exactly. And Proton's in it for the long haul. They're a long-term long-term GT3 WEC racer. So unless it was deemed that Proton were not up to the job, then I can't see any reason. I can't see any reason why Triple Eight would go WEC.
But there's just so many cars. When you think like next year, once again on the Friday, the big Friday, sort of Super Friday in terms of news, Genesis Hyundai laid out its plans for next year, and they'll definitely be on the grid. They said they will definitely be on the grid for Le Mans in 2026. So we're going to have the Genesis on there. Also, we saw the new McLaren, not just the announcement and not just artwork. We saw a mock-up. Of the car actually in the pits.
There's a good little 1-minute video on YouTube that someone did of that. Yeah, check that out.
Yeah, I downloaded. I got some stuff from McLaren. McLaren sent out a whole bunch of stuff, but I haven't had time to put it together and put it in.
AM will have a year under their belt, and I thought they did quite well considering that. Not just you look at the top 10. Top 12, and obviously there was only 15 cars in it anyway, but you look at some of the time differences, and it's a flat sprint for 24 hours these days. Just forget about the FCYs and the safety cars and all that, but the reliability of all the three categories was fantastic.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's the technology that's going into all those cars from all the companies and the work in the background behind.
That's true of all racing nowadays at the top level. I mean, we don't see the mechanical failures in Formula One like we used to. We don't see them. We don't see them in even supercar races like Bathurst, for instance. I mean, you get to the end of a Bathurst 1000 and it might be 2 or 3 cars have failed to finish. It used to be sort of 40% of the field.
Yeah, you got to rely on Paul di Resta to get in the dirty wash of a GT3 car, and go into the gravel and rip the back half of it off. That's the only way you're going to get some sort of double yellows these days. But anyway, geez, he got away with that one, didn't he? That was yeah. By the way, we are on YouTube, but Brett put up a bootleg post there at one stage. I did 5 games of football on the weekend, but trust me, I must have been on about at least 15 bootleg channels, and all of them were absolutely to the T, right on the dot on the timing, because I look at my phone and look at the watch or whatever it may be, and right, how many hours? That's spot on. So a big thank you to all those people that were bootlegging left, right,
if you
and
chase it around, I mean, because it's basically it's whack-a-mole. I mean, the ACO sit there and look for a new one, and then by the time they shut that one down, another one is
well, during the night there was one of them I was watching lasted an hour and a half, and it was going spot on. It was bloody absolutely brilliant. I noticed one of the ones late on Sunday afternoon was someone grabbed the Stan Sport one, and it was probably the best definition, the picture of all of them held in the best.
One good thing about the Stan Sport coverage, because I had the Stan Sport coverage, was it absolutely was totally in sync with the Radio Le Mans commentary. I mean, normally you sort of you got to play around with pause one and get them in sync. This was almost, I counted it was like about 2 seconds out of sync. I think it was like the commentary, the Radio Le Mans commentary was about 2 seconds ahead of the vision that was coming through, if that. So it was great. So big weekend, great work by all concerned, and of course we've got another massive 24-hour race coming up this weekend. It's already started. We had the Nürburgring Classic, the historic racing, and if you haven't caught up with that yet, by all means do that. As you wait for tomorrow night, I think we kick off. We start to kick off practice and for the Nürburgring 24 hours, and then of course the week after that we just go a fairly short run down to Belgium for the Spa 24 hours. So
hence
lots of,
Mr. MJ's little montage there, 24 by 24 by 24.
Yep.
Your other hand.
Yeah,
a ridiculous amount of 24-hour races. And as
charge up your tablets, because that's what I did. I just kept my tablet with me all weekend and just carried it with me and just watched it while I could.
Yeah, well, I had it on. I had to go out a couple of times on Sunday for various things, and I had the My Radio tuner app. I locked onto Radio Le Mans in the car, so it's amazing when you think of it. You're driving around sort of out of suburban Melbourne, and you're listening, live on your car radio to the Le Mans 24 hours. As a kid, you just would dream of something like that. And now it's all possible. But
should we touch on the Ford
race
going into all the crashes or any of the results and all the Aussies in it and so forth? But I thought it was just a big effort that Ford went with their Dark Horse and the Mustangs, and just getting logistically, I think that was just the biggest effort, getting all those cars from all
39
different
race
countries
cars
on the shipping, in the air freight, and all the parts and everything they possibly did to give all those people the opportunity to run at Le Mans and give them 2 races. So I don't want to harp on it too much, because we could bang on about another 20 minutes of that if we want to, but that was just fantastic. I thought that was a great effort, and I think from the smiles on everyone's faces, you could see in pit lane and behind the scenes, and also Rushbrook and the rest of the Ford guys there. It was really great. It was
a fabulous result for Cameron McLeod. I mean, he's shown that he's certainly like a future supercar driver. There's no doubt about that. He's certainly got the talent. He's shown it for several years now, and he's gone over there and he's taken on some experienced.
Why waste it here in supercars? Go overseas with it.
Well, you've got it. I mean, I think that's.
I also shout out to Tim Miles, the New Zealander who's raced in Porsche racing here in Australia for years and years and years. He in a tribute livery to is it Rod McRae? And his father, Hunter's grandfather, tribute livery to one of his old Mustang race cars from New Zealand. And Tim Miles came home second in the Legends class in race 2 on Saturday.
It is a bit. It is once again, as with a lot of those one make series, it is every kiddie wins a prize. There's so many categories floating around, but I mean they had plenty of. They had plenty there. It was funny. They obviously didn't know too much about Andrew Madecki and his history, because they were talking about a good performance by Andrew Madecki. This is it'll go a long way in helping his career, and it's like his career was a long time ago. But once again, it was a bucket list thing.
I was going to say, take a step back. Make sure you talk about George Madecki. What are we talking about?
No, it was Andrew. Andy was over there running.
Yeah, no, I know all that, but I'm saying, what do you mean? What all these accolades for Andrew, buddy? What about the accolades for George? Go back a step and actually look over his resume. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he's done well, but they had, obviously, but Andrew, I mean, like a legend of Australian motorsport, winner of many open wheel races, I think he won the New Zealand Grand Prix as well, and has run race group C cars as well in the goal so he's no stranger to that sort of racing.
Porsche, I think.
Sorry?
It was a Fitzpatrick Porsche. He had a
Yeah,
bit of
I think it was one of the Skull Bandit cars, wasn't it? I think they at Sandown that he raced, but certainly. And we had Tony Quinn, of course, was there as well racing, and a few Australians.
Anthony Quinn.
Yes, Anthony Quinn. But he was absolutely delighted with it. So it's an opportunity, and it was actually remarkably cheap. I mean, I think we talked about it at the time. We sort of joked with Dave Stillwell about it going over there. But when you had a look at how much it cost to get an entry in and to basically turn up and drive for a bucket list thing. I mean, if you had the credentials and you had the money, and to say I raced at Le Mans. It was actually pretty good value, I thought.
Yeah, and a bunch of people took up the opportunity, as we saw by those huge grids.
And we'll, of course, see that next year because they're going to run over here as well. One thing that we're probably not going to see over here, and it has been raised already. Well, actually, before we move on to the local stuff, because we've still got so much international stuff to talk about, got up this morning and to see... to watch a little bit of NASCAR racing, and surprise, surprise, guess who won the pony?
Yeah, we're back on a.
I saw the last 3 laps.
Yeah, well,
I was probably at work.
Yeah, well, I saw probably about the last quarter of the race, but it was just so funny that in terms of just how dominant it was and just how in awe some of the commentators were, and even his competitors, watching some of the stuff on YouTube from the one just look at that, it was otherworldly. I forget who it was, but someone said, I followed him. I followed him around at Chicago. I tried to follow him around here. I tried to find out where he was making up these tenths of seconds in every. He said, and there was whatever he was doing, and whatever his car was doing. I couldn't do it. My car couldn't do it, and I'm putting that. They just said he's. So he really, in terms of that sort of track and that sort of those sort of conditions, he was in a class of his own. I think it was about 14 seconds, and someone said it was one of the biggest victory margins that NASCAR has seen. So, which shows you how competitive NASCAR racing usually is, but.
It's on ovals. You're not going to get big margins anyway.
But Shane said himself afterwards. They said, you seem to be very comfortable. And he went, oh yes, he mentioned that he was doing a certain lap time. His eyes said if I'd have been really pushed, I couldn't have got another 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds out of it, which is terrifying for the rest of his opposition. So. And really good opportunities. Yeah, into the
imagine if
into the finals. Yes, he is. He's now has a playoff berth secured, and there is of course I think 1 or 2 road races, and I think Racer magazine was talking about that. They've said that now this really throws the cat among the pigeons.
Glen's still coming, isn't it?
Yeah, they've still got Chicago. They've still got Watkins Glen. There's still quite a few. They have added more and more road racing. And as Jared's saying, good timing. Waters, Kostecki, Brown going over. So's Jack Perkins.
Waters is on hold. He's on hold.
So that's looking like, and also even Kostecki's stuff I think is not 100% sort of locked in at this stage, but
Waters is definitely off at the moment.
You would think that they would have to drag them over, but of course, mate Jack Perkins is going over there. I think he's running Xfinity at one of the road racing tracks.
I think
so. So that'll be a great thrill for Jack. It's very much a part-timer nowadays to get over there and run, and I think sort of Shane Van Gisbergen was saying there as well. Somebody asked him, they said, who's this Jack Perkins guy? He went, he said, he said, I know him. I said, and if the conditions are right, he can win. He's never driven it before, but he can win. So, Yeah, so it's going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes for the rest of the year. But as Shane himself said afterwards, he said now he said I take off the Superman suit sort of thing. He said once we get back, next week we get back onto an oval. He said, and I'm sort of back towards the end or back in midfield somewhere. He said I've just got to he said that's the next step. And I think that was the thing that somebody said about Marcus Ambrose. It was like that was the only thing he never made that that total transition into oval racing. So
even like Will Power struggled with ovals for years, even though he was utterly dominant on road courses in IndyCar, and that's with IndyCars. The transition isn't as
well, that's why I think Shane. I think,
idiosyncratic.
Yeah, I think that's why I think Scott McLaughlin. You've got to take your hats off to Scott because I mean, apart from the fact that he had no sort of oval track experience, he also had virtually no open wheel experience. At least Will had come out of open wheelers and went over there into other open wheelers, but. Scott had basically done a little bit of Formula Ford racing, and apart from that, had basically driven sedans all his life.
Maybe that's why there's a bit more interest in some of the guys having a bit of a speedway, a bit of a whack around these days because it's oval and get used to going in circles, even if it is a little bit more grippier on top of the black stuff. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and as Jared's saying, he won Super 2, and the standalone Xfinity race means there's none of the top Cup drivers there. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of very talented drivers. So he's got to be if the cars and it should be a good car. I mean, it's one of the going over as one of the top teams. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. So certainly pushing up NASCAR and pushing up the credentials for Australian and New Zealand drivers over there. So well done to Shane. Really good to see him. He was also great to see him do the rugby kick, the drop kick in Australian rules terms, doing the drop kick into the crowd with the footy at the end of the event, and it just carried. He got it over. It did get into the grandstand. So
yeah, you don't want that landing in your tray of drinks like an Audi hat, mate.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, that would have been a bit of a shock. What they didn't have, I mean, you could tell there were no Australians in the crowd because someone would have gone the specky over the top of the head. So, could have got very ugly.
Correct. Yep. It would have just, yep. And it would have been a unrealistic attempt if he hadn't got a finger to it.
Mark were asking, will Calder Park get bought now? No, it won't because it's not for sale and it will not be for sale.
Let's not do the bus on that one. Sorry, Mark. Tonight,
Rodney has made it very clear that.
Let's not go on that one tonight. Yep.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere. And the Thunderdome will. Watching the IndyCar race, I must admit, I was thinking because they had the VMRC, I think it was, on the weekend at Calder Park, and of course didn't get out there or didn't see, but they had a really good field once again of the hyper races, and they also had a few laps around the Thunderdome, a few slow laps of the hyper races, and I thought, the hyper races, 30 hyper races on the Thunderdome, I'd pay money to see that. I mean, if they could just get a one-off. I would.
Without the weeds.
I would go there. I would say, yeah, okay. I'm going to pay money to see that. I think that would be insane.
Just make sure you round up the weeds beforehand so they don't go sliding off.
Yeah, they need more than one. Well, they've got the goats. They've got the goats out there.
Well, now they get mountain goats to go up the banking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they have had the goats out there and all the rest to keep the weeds under control. They've certainly done a bit of work out there, but it needs like a radical, but it needs basically rebuilding, and I think
maybe
there's no chance of it happening.
You'd rip it up and resurface it. Yep.
Maybe Rodney Jane was out picking up some tips while he was over in France on the weekend, racing in the Porsche Sprint Challenge at Le Mans.
Yeah, I didn't
Doing
know
quite
that
well.
didn't know Rodney was over there, but Rodney sort of got fired up because he sort of dropped out for a while. And the story I heard that it was basically his wife said, "For God's sake, the kids are growing, the kids are growing up, get out on the plane, go racing again."
That's what happened 12 months ago, because that's what basically when he started with Sonic and the Bob, and he started racing, put that third car back in again. So that's what
Yeah,
happened.
so he's
It was
but
about 12
he's got
months ago.
so that's one on his another one on his bucket list. So he's done Le Mans as well. So good luck to him. So that's one he can.
And I really got to. We didn't make mention, but the Queenslander in me has got to say yay for Matt Campbell and the crew of the number 6 Penske Porsche, Kevin Estre and Lawrence Vantor. That's to like with about 4 or 5 hours to go, they were the only non-Ferrari still in competition for the win. They went to hunt down those 3 Ferraris in front of them, and they got 2 of them. They just didn't get the yellow one.
Well, they would have got, if it hadn't have been for the safety car hitting when they would have won that race.
Well, there's a little bit more to it. I did like your post, MJ, but you forgot to mention 2 very crucial things that Porsche did to be able to get to the position they did at the end of the race, which was 1, all through the whole time, except for maybe a little bit at night, but a whole time, they were running 1 lap longer than the Ferraris and a few others. They were able to get more
13 instead of 12 laps.
Their virtual energy lasted a lap longer. A lot of the manufacturers were also getting 2 stints, and even of course Robert Kubica was absolutely flamboyant with it. He was able to get 3 stints, and he said, "Look, I'm happy I'll do 3 stints on this set of tyres." So well done, Robert. That probably helped the confidence in the team as well. But getting back to
that was just that last stint.
4.5 stints in the end.
4.5. Yeah, I mean that was.
So he's incredible.
So,
but Porsche were so the crucial things on Porsche were 1, they were on their virtual energy, were able to get 1 lap more than everyone else quite consistently whenever they wanted to, and 2, also the strategy as well though too on the Porsche, because their strategy right from the start, the engineers, the teams behind the things, you can put any driver in the damn thing and then they can go lap after lap after lap. But if you don't have what's behind the scenes right as well too, on the other side of the coin, you're not going to get in the second place and where you ended up. So big kudos to the stuff that people don't normally mention or see.
Absolutely.
Now, also today it was announced. We'll get briefly onto this. Sad news in a way. We've been giving out sort of mentioned that we've had so many sort of in memoriams on the program this year. It's getting a bit depressing, and it's not an in memoriam at this stage, but it is the patient is. The patient is in hospital in intensive care and is not expected to survive, and that is TCR Australia. They're down to their series will be 1 race at the Bend, and that's at the moment. If they get basically 1 race in Australia, the second round is still scheduled for Macau of all places. But if they can't get to Perth and they can't get to One Raceway, and they can't race pretty much anywhere in Australia to get a field together, then you'd have to wonder why they just don't put it out of its misery.
If they're in the ICU already, do we bother calling for a defib?
No, I think it's dead. I think it's dead and buried.
There's probably a DNR on them at the moment, but yeah, look, everyone's moved on. Like all of the teams that were running in TCR have moved on into other categories.
Yeah, including Trans Am TA2.
Yeah, I mean, the Suitors have moved to Trans Am.
Yeah, and GTs as well. GT4, people have gone to GT4.
A lot of
just like the S5000s, there's going to be a few cheap little 4-cylinder turbocharged off their dials laying around in some showrooms for a while.
Sadly,
they might be able to take a few of the restrictors off and all the rest of it, and they could turn into some. I mean, they're good cars. I mean, this is the sad thing about it is the racing, has been really good.
Yeah, it has.
The fields haven't been ridiculously small, but they've gotten smaller. But they haven't been it hasn't been like they've been running with 6 cars or something like that. They've had like the low teens and all that, and they've had some great racing.
Yep.
But it's they just can't seem to find a spot to
Oh,
to
I
I
think
take
think
off.
I
the
think
rise of GT4 and Trans Am slash TA2 has kind of cut their grass a bit.
and I think going way back, um, they were at the Grand Prix the year before COVID hit, and then they got disrupted by COVID, so they never really had any momentum really at big events. They never really had momentum at big events. I don't think, and
Yeah, I
then
think
the
that
S
was
five
part of the
thousands.
problem. It's a bit like S5000. I mean, COVID certainly
Yeah,
hit at the wrong time, but it
and
really hasn't taken off to the extent they were hoping anywhere in the world. I mean, the race once again, fields are pretty good. The racing is pretty good. There was a round of the World Cup that is going to be run at the Bend. The World Cup series ran on the weekend, and it was a fairly good turnout of cars, along with the TCR Spain series. But once again, it didn't really excite him. The stands were totally empty. No one was really interested. It was just I found it by accident. It's sort of not by accident. I got I'm on the media list for TCR International, and it came the result came through, and I went, oh, okay, that happened this weekend too. So I went and had a quick look online and caught up with some of the highlights. And once again, the racing was good, but yeah, it just hasn't taken off here, and it was always going to be a hard sell. In a country that's so obsessed with V8s, and now you've got another V8 category plus GT3 and now GT4, and there's more GT4s coming. They're saying that by the end of the year they could have 36 to 38 cars in GT4. So yeah,
And
that's insane.
TCR doesn't even have their niche in world motorsport to themselves, because there's TCN or TCN1, if you prefer, that operates in pretty much the exact same sphere as TCR, like 2-liter turbocharged race cars, touring car series, and that TCN1 is the category behind the British Touring Car Championship, for example. So yeah, it's they could like it's like that's part of what like TCR couldn't even like in the days of super touring, there wasn't a rival to super touring within that same space, and super touring lasted for over a decade. TCR has had to fight with other rule sets, and it's haven't had the same longevity without that additional support.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I can't see how they can revive it again. I mean, sort of Gary and Barry of last time I spoke to Barry about TCR, I mean, they were still fairly confident, and they were hedging their bets on the fact that the World Challenge was coming back to Australia, and they thought, well, that's going to really get people interested. And once we missed out last year, and that stuffed us around really badly. But they were coming back this year. We'd have all the top cars from overseas and the top drivers plus Australia's best, and that would really sort of fire things up again. But now it's going to be a one-off. I mean, so in terms of the people who had planned to do the series, and there had been a few announcements. How many of them are going to be around for? How many Australian cars are actually going to turn up on the grid at the Bend? The only thing they've got in their favour is really it might be easier to sell off a one-off sponsorship deal, especially when they're going to be on the same card as the supercars. So that might make it easier. There might be a few sort of one-offs to bring the numbers up of the Australian cars. Then of course plus however many the internationals come across for the World Challenge, you might
There
get
are
a relatively decent field out of it.
14 cars that contest the TCR World Tour that are like committed to the whole tour, and there's a factory team from both Lynk & Co and Hyundai
Yeah,
with.
well, that's the thing. If you've got those 14 cars, and then you can add sort of like 8 to 10 Australian cars, it's going to be a pretty good field.
I can hope.
It'll invigorate it a little bit. Let's see how the fallout goes. But it'll be fantastic, and let's see how it goes. And we'll give it some accolades, just see what the fallout comes from, and see if it can and jump on board from there. Couple of quick fun facts before we get anywhere near the finished. I was online as well, though, too, like you guys, and I saw how when you're watching a video on the screen and it finishes up and you're doing something and it flicks automatically, YouTube will flick automatically to the next one, and it'll be some random something. Well, a fun fact was Formula One, and they were interviewing. It was a properly production type Formula One video. They were asking all the Formula One drivers, do they remember when they were first told that they were going to be driving got their first contract Formula One, who they told and what it was all like. And of course, most of them all just said yes. I told my mum and dad first at the same time, or I rung this person, or got to get together with these bunch of friends and stuff like that, and including Fernando Alonso. But they also asked him the question, do you remember when your first day on your first Formula One race and what it was like and all that? And they all had, Esteban Ocon, so it was just so surreal. I remember it was like yesterday, all this and stuff like that. They got to Fernando and said, it was that damn long ago, I can't remember it.
And he was so young when he started as well. So
they brought up some video footage. I just cannot remember a damn thing about it. It was so long ago.
It was, and he was racing for Minardi. Yeah. A name long gone.
And
the other fun fact, it's funny because as I've said on this program and to other people in the past, perhaps it's something about Fernando, perhaps it's catching or something. Because, I'd forgotten completely that Fernando had been on the show, that we'd interviewed Fernando. I have no recollection of that at all until Carolina said, no, remember I got an autograph from my dad, and I went, oh, now I remember that, but I have no recollection at all of doing that interview.
My mate was in the motorcycle industry for a long, long time as a rep for. It wasn't Peter Stevens, it was another one. Anyway, he was Mobile One was sponsoring whatever team that he was with at the time many, many years ago, and Rusty, my mate who lives up in Wallen, Rusty was there, and they got a private little gig there in the function room with Fernando for a few minutes there one day at Australian Formula One, and he went in, and Fernando brought in the steering wheel off the car as well too, or one of the steering wheels off the car they have there that they attach to it. And he come in, it was only a few of them, he said, but he was just so nice. He was such a lovely bloke. He showed them, they got to have a look at the steering wheel and pass it around. He showed them some functions and stuff like that on it, and he said he was an absolute great guy. And that was, it was a private setting and a function, and Mobile One sponsored, but Rusty remembers that for the rest of his life. He said Fernando was such a lovely guy.
Well, I found that in general with the Formula One guy. I mean, as I said, the only one, and I can't say I had any sort of incident with him myself, but I was there. I mean, I didn't. That was Max. He was the only one that I've ever sort of had any dealings with. That it was no, he was. I don't think that he was nasty or anything. I just don't think he really. He's really into that sort of thing. Because it was funny because after the interview, after the win for Shane, he said, they said, oh, what do you think of your mate, Max Verstappen? And it was like, oh yeah, I was on the phone to him this morning before our respective races. So he said, I must get and find out how he went, sort of thing. He'll be wrapped. So and I know a few people who have done iRacing stuff with him, or sim racing stuff, and they say that look, get him away from that competitive side of there. He's a really nice bloke, but he's very focused. But to an extent, although on a different sort of way. So is Oscar. It's like they've got a job to do, and they're not there to fool around. They're there to win.
The other quick mention, the other fun fact, but more of a local level. For work, I had to go down Springvale Road yesterday, and also down towards Carrum. And I haven't been there for a long, long time and forgot where it is, but Brett and I mentioned it once in a blue moon and have something to do it when we go to the racetrack, is the Bowl factory down there on the corner down in Carrum, and I just happened to drive past and go, look where I am. And so I stared across on the corner and looked all the way around and went back. They are doing a lot of fiberglass truck bodies at the moment. So I don't know if we're going to see have come back for truck racing, but I did see a lot of fiberglass. I saw a lot of truck body fiberglass things. But anyway, that's just a fun fact. They are still cranking it out down there.
The thing was, the last cars that they put out, as you know, we interviewed Campbell Bolwell at the motor show. Speaking of which, we've got the EV motor show coming up at the end of this month as well. So we'll
saw that.
But anyway, let's finish up. We've been going for an hour now. So as I said, we obviously are not going to get to. You obviously can't get to everything that's out there, and of course Le Mans, that was my total focus for the weekend. I mean, everything else was secondary, and it was just another great race. It went very quickly. As I said before, it's a very emotional weekend for me, a very emotional event, and this was it took its toll, but it was a great race, and congratulations to Robert Kubica. I mean, talking about nice Formula One drivers, Robert is one of the nicest guys I think I have dealt with over the years. We dealt with him way back in his Formula BMW days when he was racing with Melbourne's own Sam Abbey, and we met him out at. We actually got into some trouble out at Sandown because he was there with BMW. And he decided that just for a bit of fun and for some good visuals, he'd do a few donuts around us in the BMW road car that he had that he had a lend of at the time, until a BMW executive came in very quickly and said, "For God's sake, do not use any of that footage, Robert. We need to talk."
I'm sure it would have blown over by the end of the day.
So he was. Tell
that to Lewis Hamilton after his burnout in front of the car park at the Grand Prix.
That was it. But so Robert remembered. Then he did a similar sort of thing with Renault several years later. Once he was in Formula One, and they sent him round Sandown with I think it was a Megane Sport. And the idea was he was to go out, do a lap, a bit of a gimmick lap around in the Renault Megane Sport, and then come back into pit lane, jump out and do a media interview. When he got the Megane back into pit lane, there was smoke and flames just pouring off the front brakes on the bloody thing. He'd absolutely just one lap, he'd thrashed it into the ground.
Totally to do what we're talking about, bit of fun, and Robert Kubica and the factory team at Ferrari. Did you see the factory team play funny buggers on the radio with the satellite team at Le Mans, and it didn't pay? That was quite funny. I was listening to the radio messages. I think after about 3 or 4, it got to the point where Robert said, I was listening to Robert's ones, literally Robert himself on the radio saying, "Well, I've helped them out 2 or 3 times and let them go by and so forth. Yeah. How about a little bit our way? Robert, we'll get back to you." Robert, about 2 minutes later, "Robert, we've said to you, we've spoken to them. They will let us do it, but you need to get up basically on their on their tailpipe, and then they'll let you through." And he's like, "Oh, you're kidding me." There was like Formula One messages coming through, I swear.
Yeah, they tried to play it, but he was very lucky. I mean, the fact that the Porsche jumped into second meant that they couldn't play funny buggers. They couldn't say, "Hey, Robert, slow down and let the 50 or the 51 car through." Now, as it turns out, the number 50 car was disqualified after the race. It finished in 4th place and was disqualified just on the Monday because it was without 4 bolts in the rear wing, and it failed the flex test.
The flex test.
So so that was they've been disqualified completely. That moved everybody else up 1 spot. Which is good news for them.
They did swap the cars over late in the race, and I'm wondering a little bit. Well, yeah, maybe they thought the 50 car might be in a little bit of trouble, so we'll get them to finish 4th, and then under a little bit of less scrutiny.
Yeah, that was a little bit unusual. So in hindsight, yeah, you might be right there.
Ferrari, the best Italian team to cut their nose off despite their face. And that's I'm talking about.
Look, you You can't complain about that. That's 3 years in a row they've won with that car.
Yeah.
They've had three different cars, three different sets of
Yeah.
drivers.
Good on you.
Congratulations to Robert, and
Ah, yeah,
also
of
to
course.
Yifei as well. Or Yifei, so I forget which way it goes.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think he's pretty casual.
Her name's Yee.
I think he's pretty casual about it, but
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
very
And
good.
also Manti for winning GT3.
Yeah, winning GT3 as well. Yeah, TCR claiming it was the supports that pulled out of one race. That was a bit worrying too, because I mean, one of those supports was that did pull out was the AU3, the open wheel. So perhaps because they seem to have a pretty good.
I was watching them. I remember a few weeks ago. They're great racing.
Was that AU3 or AU4?
That was AU4, I think.
Oh, you four. I
Yeah,
was
so I
watching.
think
Wasn't it? Okay, yeah. So
AU3 mightn't they mightn't have sufficient numbers yet to yeah, mightn't have sufficient numbers
Anywho.
to do that. But anyway, either way, it's a shame. It'd be good if they could get onto some other card, but I think they're struggling, and I think that obviously the AU3 is is not up to the stage where it needs to be yet. But anyway, let's get out of here now, because otherwise we'll be here all night. So we've got another 24-hour race this weekend to get through. So enjoy the Nürburgring 24-hour. The good thing about the Nürburgring is you don't have to worry about signing up to Stan or Netflix or Prime or anybody like that, or even DW International. You just go to the Nürburgring YouTube channel, and all the action will be up there, and on the English, and all the English language coverage is coming from John Hindhoff and the team at Radio Le Mans as well. So they have got just an extraordinary 3 weeks.
come on, I'll look back on it and be very proud.
I imagine they will have 2. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll see you, hopefully next week, when we'll have another 24-hour race to talk about. And if it's anything like the recent Nürburgring 24 hours, it will be insane as well. We've also got supercars this weekend at Hidden Valley as well. So and then
great
all
track.
sport races.
Great event.
Yeah, it's a very, very popular event, so we'll certainly have something to talk about then, as we do every week. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you later. Until then, bye for now, everybody.